My friends, there is a peculiar lie that has crept into the modern mind, a lie whispered with such sweetness that it appears noble, and yet it has all the subtle poison of a serpent's tongue. It is the lie of self-help. Not the honest discipline of hard work or the worthy labor of diligence. These are good things. But the self-exalting notion that man, by some secret method or hidden spark within himself, can heal his own soul, repair his own brokenness, and climb to heights beyond the reach of his nature. This is the lie. The first evidence of its falsehood is seen in the lives of those who preach it most loudly. They speak of limitless strength, yet one sees in their eyes the familiar fatigue of striving. They assure us that the cure is already within, but their own hunger betrays them. For if a man could quench his thirst with water that bubbled from his own chest, he would never seek a well. Yet we all are seeking. We are all thirsty, and it is not the barren cisterns of self that can satisfy. There is, in the heart of man, a wound so ancient and so deep that no ointment of his own making can heal it. The wound is pride, and the wound is separation from the very source of his being. The self may polish itself, may decorate itself with the appearance of wisdom and strength, but it cannot alter its own essence. A branch may be painted green, but without the root it remains dead. And so it is with the soul, without a source greater than itself. No amount of helping oneself will restore life. The lie of self-help appeals to our pride because it flatters us. It tells us we are sufficient. It whispers that the treasure lies in the mirror, if only we stare long enough. But the truth is altogether more humbling and more glorious. The truth is that man was never meant to be his own savior. He was meant to be dependent, not in chains but in freedom, the kind of freedom only found when the soul leans on the one who fashioned it. Dependence, you see, is not a mark of weakness but of design. The bird depends on the air to fly, the fish on the sea to swim, and the soul on its creator to live. To believe the lie of self-help is to wander into a desert carrying an empty cup, insisting there is water in the sand. You may search and perhaps find a mirage that shimmers for a while, but when you reach for it, it will slip through your fingers. The truth, however, is nearer than your breath. Living water does exist, but it is not found by digging in the dust of self. It comes only when we admit we cannot make it flow from within. So let us not flatter ourselves with empty remedies. Let us not mistake the echo for the voice, nor the shadow for the light. For in the end, self-help is a ladder built of paper, and though a man may climb it with great effort, he will find it crumbles the moment he leans upon it. There is a firmer foundation, a higher hand, a true helper who waits, not to watch us exhaust ourselves with futile remedies, but to give freely what we cannot create. And only when we have the humility to confess the lie will we be ready to receive the truth. Self-help flatters pride but cannot heal the soul. Self-help flatters pride but cannot heal the soul. For at its core it whispers the message that man is sufficient in himself, that his strength is limitless if only he learns to harness it, that his heart carries within it all the tools required for transformation. This sounds noble, even empowering, yet it masks a deeper poverty, for the heart that believes it is self-sufficient is already deceived. Pride is fed by the illusion that one needs no higher power, no guiding hand, no source beyond one's own will. But pride has never been the cure of man's wounds. It has always been the disease. If self-help were true, then the human race would have long since healed itself, having written countless books and repeated endless slogans promising a better life. Yet history reveals no golden age of perfected humanity born from sheer determination. Instead, it shows the same cycles of striving and failing, the same thirst unquenched, the same ache in the soul that refuses to be silenced by man-made remedies. Pride convinces a person that his brokenness can be repaired by simply trying harder, and so he climbs the mountain of self, discipline, and willpower, only to discover that the summit keeps rising higher than his reach. The weariness that follows is not accidental, but inevitable, because the soul was never built to sustain itself apart from its maker. One may polish the outside with habits, strategies, or affirmations, but within the secret chambers of the heart, the same old emptiness stirs, waiting to remind us that true healing cannot be manufactured. To seek salvation in the self is to drink salt water. It promises refreshment, but leaves one more parched than before. The very appeal of self-help is its flattery, telling us we are stronger than we truly are, telling us that we have within ourselves the spark of divinity. Yet what we find instead is exhaustion, disappointment, and the growing realization that no matter how much we search inward, the well runs dry. Pride thrives on this endless cycle, for it convinces us to try again, to invent new methods, to believe that the failure was only in execution rather than in the foundation of the idea itself. Yet beneath the noise of these promises lies the undeniable truth that man cannot mend his own soul, for the problem is not ignorance or weakness alone, but estrangement from the very source of life. Man was never designed to be his own savior. Man was never designed to be his own savior, for to save oneself implies that one possesses the power to lift his nature above its own limitations, to heal the fracture within without any aid from beyond. Yet everything in creation testifies against such a possibility. The bird was fashioned for the air, and without it falls lifeless to the ground. The fish for the sea, and without it gasps in futility. And so too the soul was fashioned for communion with its Creator, and without him it cannot flourish. To imagine that a creature can be its own deliverer is to confuse design with destiny, for design reveals dependence, and dependence is not a flaw, but the very structure of life. When the soul attempts to rescue itself, it enters into a strange contradiction, for it is both the patient and the physician, both the wound and the healer, and no wound has ever stitched itself whole. History and personal experience alike demonstrate that man's greatest failures come not from lack of cleverness or determination, but from believing that the cure for his condition lies within the very heart that is sick. He creates systems, philosophies, and strategies, each claiming to provide the latter out of despair, yet he finds himself climbing only to arrive at the same pit with a different name. The weight of guilt, the burden of selfish desire, the shadow of mortality, these are not solved by sheer willpower, for they are not external inconveniences, but internal realities that cling to human nature itself. To be one's own savior would mean to alter the essence of one's being, to break free from the gravity of sin by one's own effort, but gravity cannot be defied by pulling at one's own shoestrings. The hope of self-salvation flatters the ego but collapses under scrutiny, for no man can give himself what he does not already possess, and if he possessed life in its fullness, he would not be seeking it. The very longing for redemption proves that it lies outside of self, as hunger proves the need for food and thirst proves the need for water. Man was made for rescue, and this is no disgrace but a reflection of the truth that he was never meant to be alone, never meant to sustain himself by his own strength, never meant to carry the unbearable burden of saving his own soul. True freedom is found only in dependence on the Creator. True freedom is found only in dependence on the Creator. for what the world calls freedom is often nothing more than another form of bondage disguised in shining clothes. To be free, in the worldly sense, is to answer to no one, to shape one's destiny by one's own will, to declare that nothing outside the self may rule over it. Yet, such freedom is an illusion, for the soul that rejects its true master does not wander unchained. It merely exchanges the gentle yoke of its maker for the crushing weight of lesser tyrants. Desires, fears, ambitions, and the opinions of men quickly rush to fill the throne left vacant, and the self that claims to be its own ruler discovers it is ruled instead by 1,000 voices. Dependence upon the Creator, far from being slavery, is the only condition in which the soul breathes easily, for it was shaped to live in harmony with Him, as lungs are shaped to receive air and not dust. When the soul yields to its true source, it finds its scattered pieces drawn into wholeness, its restless hungers stilled, its ceaseless striving quieted. Paradoxically, the chains of autonomy fall away precisely at the moment of surrender, for in acknowledging its need for God, the soul ceases to bow to the cruel demands of self-sufficiency. The world may sneer and call this weakness, but it is in truth the highest strength, for no man is freer than the one who has nothing left to prove and no rival master to serve. Dependence on the Creator liberates the mind from the endless exhaustion of inventing meaning and the heart from the futility of manufacturing love. For meaning and love are not the inventions of man, but the gifts of God. To be dependent is not to be diminished, but to be fulfilled, because the creature is most itself when aligned with its design. The river does not lament that it cannot carve its own path apart from gravity. It rejoices in the current that carries it to the sea. So it is with the human soul. It is not diminished in yielding to God, but carried into the vastness for which it was made. The irony of true freedom is that it begins where pride ends, when the soul lays down its fragile crown and discovers that independence lies not limitation, but life without measure.